was so focused on the big picture, crazy things, the world's collapsing, all that. But focus on what you have at arm's length. Build your foundation. Focus on your family, your loved ones. Find love. Build a family if you don't have one. Work hard to improve yourself, to help your loved ones. All that are things that everyone can agree upon, get motivated by, feel proud of. And doing that also gives you something in common with the other fellow good man who's on that path.
Brando Eaton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir.
What's going on today?
Today's a chill day. It's nicer weather. It's not too hot out, and got some work done, some calls done, got a quick workout in, and came to hang out with my friend, Ed Clay.
I know. I'm glad that you're here. I've been wanting to do this for a while.
Yeah. I think that's exciting. You're doing this. Actually.
Yeah, man. Thanks. The whole idea of doing a podcast. We were doing one, I guess, before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and we just started it like 2 months before. And then it threw a wrench in everything, Our lives were turned upside down. So This is the next iteration of it.
Yeah, well, this is good. And you're always great at talking to people, asking questions. I always notice that about you. So, I think this is right up your alley, too.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, man. Dude, what's been up with the weather? This year we got rain. Last year there was no rain.
I don't know. I don't control the weather anymore.
You don't?
No, I don't know. I have to say, I was spoiled coming from Los Angeles. I never lived anywhere. I've traveled a lot, but I never lived anywhere that had seasons like this. And then I come here, and it's shocking. I'm like, oh, there's winter. Oh, there's summer where I can't even go outside. It's very different. I was spoiled.
Yeah, you grew up in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah. So what was that like? Kind of take us through your childhood and up until, I guess, was Nashville the first place you moved from LA?
Yeah. I've lived different places for work, but officially moving, Nashville's the first one. A lot of people wonder what life was like in LA, big city and all that, but I kind of grew up in a smaller town by the beach, so I was kind of out of the LA bubble.
What town was it?
El Segundo.
Okay.
So that was, not as much it's not like I grew up in Hollywood. It wasn't until my teens that I got into more of the Hollywood world. But it was I'd say a little bit of a different upbringing because my family dynamic was different. My father wasn't around as my father. He was more friends with my mother. My mother's physically handicapped. And so it was a big goal in her life to have a child. And the doctors, were like, oh, you can't have a kid, you'll die, this or that. She had arthritis as a kid, fused all her bones together. So she has about 5% mobility of a normal person. And so she liked my father and wanted to, she just thought genetically he would make the best child of her friends that she it's kind of a funny, different, odd story. And so he was around in the sense of more like a friendly sense. Mm-hmm. I would see him here and there. And to this day, where we obviously keep in touch, and he's a great guy, but he did not raise me. And so it was just me and my mother. So single mother. Yeah. Only child.
And, I guess when you were going, at what point did you get introduced to the Playboy mansion?
That's a story that people love. It's totally random, really. So my aunt was married to Berry Gordy, who started Motown Records, a big record company. Motown, music huge in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if I'm saying that right, 80s even. But anyway, they're still around. And so my aunt was married to him. He's good friends with Hugh Hefner, or was. And so my aunt became good friends with him as well, and his wife at the time, now ex-wife, Kimberly Hefner. And so they would bring me around, and I became friends with his kids, Marston and Cooper Hefner, who I'm not as in touch with anymore, but they were good buddies of mine when we were growing up. And so it was kind of a random situation where I would be there all the time, and I was always fighting with my mother. We were always fighting. She, it's such a different dynamic growing, because I had to take care of her growing up. She's physically handicapped. Well, at the same time, she's raising a kid. So we're kind of like raising or taking care of each other. Mm-hmm. Very weird family dynamic. and so we were always butting heads. And she had problems with painkillers at the time and stuff. She's now past all that, but so it kind of threw her for a loop. But anyway, that was tough for me, and so it made me very independent. So I did get a lot of positive growth out of it. Kind of had to raise myself in a lot of ways, not all the ways, but some ways. And so at 15, about 15, we just reached a breaking point, and I moved out. So I moved out of the house, and you can't get an apartment on your own at that time, nor did I have the money to. So I just kind of took my stuff to the Playboy Mansion. And they were cool with it. They were cool with letting me, oh yeah, just come here, and just kind of kept going. And it's funny, I went into one of the rooms. I would stay a lot in one of the rooms. I would stay with the kids and Kimberly a lot. They lived next door. But then there was a room across from Hugh Hefner's room in the Playboy Mansion that was empty at the time, so I'd be there a lot. And I think when they filmed the show, it's now one of the bunny rooms. They painted it pink or something, if I'm remembering correctly. This was, years ago. It was 15 and maybe 16. But anyway, so I would stay there, and I'd run into Hugh Hefner in the halls all the time, and he just kind of assumed I was supposed to be there because he would see me all the time with his family too, but he never really asked questions. I would, he's the door across from mine. It's a long hall, but just like, oh, hello, like just kind of normal. And I just order room service all the time and hang out and go to the grotto, and it was actually pretty chill. It was pretty fun, but it is also kind of a weird dynamic for a child to be around because it's not as pornographic as you would assume, in the sense of just stuff everywhere and people screwing here and there. It wasn't like that, especially when the kids were around. Like, they didn't allow us to the parties, things like that. But at the same time, there's still stuff around, and so you are exposed to a lot more that maybe I wouldn't want a child exposed to.
Right.
It is more commonplace and normal there. And then, of course, as a teenager, like, when they had like game days where like the naked girls would be outside in the yard while Hugh was playing like games, backgammon or whatever he liked to play with his friends. It was game day, so they would have the girls out. And so I would hide an inner tube outside the grotto, in the pool, like outside where the exit of the grotto is if you swim under the tunnel. And so I would hide an inner tube there. And so I'd go into the grotto because I was allowed over there, but I wasn't allowed outside. So then I swim under the tunnel, and I pop up in the inner tube, and I have my little, hidey hole going around looking at all the naked girls. I was a 15-year-old boy.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Did you ever sneak into any of the parties?
Not when I was a kid. Later, I started going to the parties. So then I would go to the parties, and it was very fun. But it's funny, so I have a good friend of mine at the time. I actually, I kind of advised her that it was okay to do Playboy. She was a model at the time. We were friends probably since I was 18. And she was very worried to do Playboy. And I was like, oh, it's tasteful. Like, it's fine. Like, anyway, we stayed very good friends. She became a Playboy model. And Hugh was obsessed with her. He was obsessed with her because he said that she reminded him of his first love. And he really wanted to marry her, but she wasn't down with that. So he ended up marrying who he married. And anyway, we stayed good friends, and we would go to the parties and stuff. And what happened at one point, Hugh was getting much older at this point, kind of probably losing his brain cells a bit, Alzheimer's. I don't know what it was, but senile. Senile is what I'm trying to think of. And so at one point, he barged in her room with a printed out photo of me. And he's like, "Who's this?" And she's like, "That's Brando. You know who that is. He's friends with your family." And he's like, "Oh, man." And he like barges out. Ends up, somebody spread a rumor that it was a girl that spread a rumor that I was sleeping with her. And he was very protective, and even especially at that point, jealous of the girls, very protective of what they did and stuff. And he was very unhappy. And it wasn't true. It was a rumor. We were just friends. But at that point, she hits me up. I think it was like the Halloween party, or there was some party that night. She's like, "I don't know what's going on." He barged in my room with a photo, and she's like, "Maybe you shouldn't come to the party." I'm like, "Nah, I'm still gonna come." And It felt like I was in a James Bond movie. Because I'm at this party and security is following me around everywhere. And ends up they have a little photo of me so they can keep tabs on me. And they're literally like I feel like it was literally a spy, like having to avoid security and all that. And anytime I would go up and say hi to her, suddenly security would surround us, be like, "Oh, I don't want to say names, but you're needed somewhere else," and they would take her away from me. And I'm like, this is weird. The funny thing is, I was friends with his kids though, so like during the parties, you're not supposed to go in the house, but I would go with the kids into the house. So then security is kind of torn because they're like, he's not supposed to, do anything. And now you're bringing him in the house, but they also don't want to say no to the kids, kind of like next in line to the throne. And so it's a funny dynamic. And ends up, at the end of the night, the party was over. I was in the dining hall just eating some late night snacks. Finally, the kids went off and hung out with their girlfriends or whatever. So I was alone with my buddy that I brought, and security swooped in and kicked me out. And she actually drove me back to my car because you have to park somewhere else. Buses take you, and this was like 4 a.m. probably at this point. And so she drives me, and security's following us. We get to the parking lot. Security's everywhere, and they're by the car, just standing there trying to act nonchalant. And I actually had this on a phone video I was recording because she was hilarious. We drive by, and they have shirts on that say, like, protect and serve. She drives by, and she's like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, and she goes, "Protecting and serving." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Okay, keep protecting and serving." It was funny, like out of a movie. But that might have been one of the last parties I actually went to. I don't remember at this point, but kind of a funny story.
Did Hugh remember you, or was it like?
I did hear that some of the family members or his ex-wife she heard about it and barged in on him later. And it's like, "What are you doing?" Like, it's like a family friend, and I never really chatted with him at that point, so I didn't know. This was towards the end of his life.
I see.
So I don't know how far gone he was at that point. Like, they would take him out to show face, but it was like he's in his robe and they're like kind of carrying him at that point.
Sure.
So I don't even blame him. He was probably pretty far gone.
Yeah, got it. What was it like? Those parties and stuff. Like, did you go to the Playboy mansion? Over the years.
Yeah.
As far as for the parties.
Yeah, there were wild parties for sure. They weren't like how they were in the 70s and 80s. Not like I was alive then, but you would hear stories. They were very debaucherous and drug-fueled, sex-fueled. And obviously they're still kind of that, or they were still kind of that. But at the point I started going, it was more corporatized.
I see.
So there was a lot more oversight. There were companies coming in, like buying pieces of the brand to revamp or whatever they were doing. So it wasn't like a private house party that's crazy and everything goes. It was more corporatized at that point. And plus, the girls and the people that went in the past were like cream of the crop, top celebrities, top this, top that. Once it became more corporatized, it kind of became trashier and trashier. Mm-hmm. And so I think that drove away a lot of, the classier crowd that, maybe would have gone to the parties previously. They wouldn't necessarily partake in the debauchery, but just, it was also, there was also a classier vibe to it if you stayed away from the debauchery. It covered all bases, and it started lacking that.
I see. Yeah, the parties in LA are so weird. I remember, gosh, this is probably 18 years ago or so. I had a girlfriend who was living in Los Angeles. We dated for 4 years, and she was modeling at a party, whatever that is. They hire pretty girls to walk around or whatever.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh no, you can come. Just come at the end to pick me up." And so there's like a gate and then a gate to the house. There's like the security gate in the front of the neighborhood, and then and somehow I got through. I don't remember how I got through that first security gate. And I go in there, and I was definitely not invited.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, "Who is this guy?"
Yeah.
walking in my house, and it was kind of a weird vibe. And security came up and said, "Oh, who are you with?" "Oh, I'm picking up my girlfriend," and I got kindly escorted out.
Yeah.
And there were a few other instances like that where my friends who were female, not even necessarily my girlfriends, they would say, "Oh, come to this party," and then I get there and they're like, "What are you doing here?" You
Right.
know. When a girl asks you to go to a party in LA, or if it's at some mansion, like, you're probably actually not invited.
You are not invited. That's absolutely true. Yeah, it's very cliquey in that sense, and yeah, those are things that I wasn't really fond of. I mean, it's fun when you're younger, and then as you get older, it's like I want to stay away from the trash and crowds that you want to avoid if you're trying to be on the right path. And so there is a lot of that. And then it's also, when I moved here, I thought, oh, leaving the land of opportunity. Like, what the hell am I going to do in Nashville? And also, coming from the entertainment world, it's like, how am I, I guess that's done. But I will say Nashville's been very productive and very great in a lot of ways because, yeah, it may not have as many people as LA and as much money as LA, things like that. But it's very hard, I grew up there my whole life, and still, like, it's very hard to network or meet good people, meet genuine people, and actually get ideas and businesses going because it's very cliquey. It's very hard to get into a different clique, especially at the top level, the millionaires, the billionaires at that point. Like, it is very cliquey, and it's very hard to pierce that veil. And whereas in Nashville, it's more small town, everyone knows everyone, which has its advantages and disadvantages. But
Sure.
it's been good for meeting people and actually finding like-minded people that are interested in different businesses, and and it's really opened a lot of doors in the business sense, while still doing entertainment.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, LA is a whole other animal. You talk about not finding good people. And there are good people, of course, in LA.
Yeah.
You can meet some, but it is kind of hard to, navigate socially on something, like where you're just trying to be friendly when it's a different barometer. They're going based off of clout and what they think you can do for them.
Yes.
Yes. Rather than, what kind of person you are.
Absolutely. It's filled with the clout chasers, and I will say there's a lot of that in Nashville too.
Yeah, that's changing now. Nashville's changed so much. When I grew up, like, you would never ask for a picture with somebody. Like, that was kind of off limits. It was kind of it was a code. You don't go up to a celebrity and ask for pictures. And, now it's like a free for all if you go out. There is that, there is clout chasing now more than ever. And I think it's probably because, Nashville, the original Nashville is a specific culture, and there's a lot of respect, and, you build relationships and those type of things within the city. And, people that move here, they have a different idea of what that is, and it is becoming a little bit more, in some ways like LA. It's a lot different than LA, but, in those ways that where the things that aren't really important in life, like, how many followers you have, or if you're on TV or whatever that is, become more important to some people.
That's true, and that does suck that's becoming part of the Nashville culture. Because I wanted to escape that by leaving LA, and then in some ways I'm like, oh, in some ways I moved to Little LA, and so that I'm not happy about that side of it. And another part that kind of it's tough. I guess it's a double-edged sword. So coming from LA and working in entertainment so long, people, in LA, no one cared. Like, yeah, I was on TV shows and movies, but I wasn't a huge star. Like, I was in good stuff, but it's not like I'm Brad Pitt or something.
Sure.
And so in LA, it's normal, right? It's commonplace. Then you move here, and it is a little bit of that big fish, small pond mentality of, oh, cool, you're on TV. Like, it's less common here. And there are advantages to that, where it helps you meet people and it opens a lot of doors. And I've met a lot of great people through it. Just going out and even going to your parties and stuff like that. So that's nice. But on the flip side, it also gives you unwanted attention. And I don't even mean like, oh, someone wants my photo or something. Like, that's fine. But it's more everyone has something to say about you. Suddenly, you're more of a talking point, almost like high school. Like, if there was a popular kid in school, people want to talk about. I'm not saying I'm popular, but I'm just saying it's that dynamic. Whereas I kind of was nothing in LA, like just kind of blended in. It was very normal. And then here, it's like I'm hearing rumors or people talking about me, and I'm like, I don't even know who that person is, and things posted online, and all that stuff happens all the time from people that don't even know me. It's like people feel cool having something to say, and then you feel cooler if it's something negative.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's such a, I mean, just in general in life, it's such a nasty thing, you know, for people to be like that. And the main thing is just separate. You know, it's pretty easy once you see people doing that, like, okay, I don't want to hang out with that group. And, you know, we have a pretty good core group of friends in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate because I've been here my whole life. I've got a bunch of different groups, you know, of friends. But I feel like it's still pretty easy to pick and choose who you want to be friends with and who align with your values. And, you know, those people, you know, they don't align.
100%, and it's easy to avoid them. And even growing up in Hollywood and being on TV, I did have to work on having that confidence within yourself to not care about what others think of you, especially strangers. I care about what loved ones and people whose opinions I value. I care what they think about me, but strangers, I don't care. And that struck me a lot because I would see big stars that I'd work with, and they're seeing things posted on Twitter, things that people are saying about them, and just it's affecting them, like really negatively affecting them. And so quickly it becomes, luckily with my philosophy background and things like that, I really dove deep into working on myself and my mind and all that to kind of build up the right defense mechanisms for that, to where genuinely I don't care what a stranger, like, why do you value that person's opinion? You don't know them at all.
Yeah.
And even if they're coming out negative like that or whatever, you probably really don't value their opinion or value them as a person as much. And so there is a good defense mechanism built there. But I will say there's one avoidable problem. And what that is how it affects people that you do care about or you may care about in the future. Meaning, if somebody's researching you, let's say you go on a first date, and you don't know who that person is, you're researching them, you see all this negative stuff online or whatever. That's your first impression.
Sure.
You're now tentative. You're now maybe you don't want to go on that date. You don't trust that person. You have more walls up. It does affect people that are in your life or may be in your life at some point. And that's the unavoidable part. That's sad. That sucks.
Yeah, it is tough. You know, and I think, you know, we're the first time in civilization per se, as we know it, that people can post online. There wasn't an online 25 years ago, pretty much. They can make, you know, bad comments. I think, though, you know, in many ways we're kind of used to it now because it's been going on for now, let's say 20 years. You know, there's been social media forums and different forums. And so we're kind of, you know, used to, you know, we might not take it as serious what we read online about people. And, you know, it's more about really getting to know them, you know, rather than that first impression. You know, you're definitely correct. But my thing is, if someone doesn't like me because of something that's posted online, like, that's their loss.
Right.
You know, little different view.
And you're right. You're right. But, you know, people make mistakes and people don't know and people have certain guards up. And so that's just where it just does suck. It just does suck.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the comment sections too, people can just be so mean. You know, I hear Joe Rogan's like, I don't read the comments. You know, that's his thing. Is I won't read comments. And I still do read some comments. I don't read them all. But, you know, when you really read what a certain section of society says, like, and you read the comments and like how people think. I mean, I was reading a comment last night, and it was two people arguing on my Instagram, and the one guy was just such an asshole to the other person, basically saying, "You're stupid, you're worthless." The guy had said he was libertarian, and the guy had all the different ways to trash, you know, that. And, you know, I was kind of thankful after reading it. I'm like, I'm so glad that I don't think like that. I don't carry that hate and anger in my heart to try to put somebody else down, you know, for really nothing, just saying what he believes.
Right. And that's what the internet is full of. Yeah, it's really changed that dynamics. It's so different from talking to someone in person, or even if you're a kind of, let's just say you are kind of mentally messed up and full of hate and, kind of a mess. When you're sitting down in front of someone, looking them in the eyes, even that type of person, it's going to change how you interact with someone.
Sure.
And there's more repercussions to your actions too in person. And so that the internet gives people that barrier and lets the worst come out in people. And in some ways it incentivizes it too. And so that is the problem with it.
How does it incentivize it? What do you think?
Because there's no repercussions. Because you can let out all your frustrations, all your angers, all the stuff that might be even more stored towards the back, and it kind of incentivizes it to come towards the front. Because you're now able to focus on what you hate. You're able to focus on your problems. You're able to let out your anger of whatever, your dog shitting on your carpet. Now you can let it out on a stranger in the YouTube comment section. Like, in that way, it lets you open up those doors that would be usually harder to open.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And no repercussion. Like, if you wouldn't say it to somebody's face, why would you say it in a comment?
Yeah, and they will, because there's no repercussions.
Yeah, it's like, wait. Some of these people, though, I mean, I feel like they need to get punched in the face.
Yeah. There's a lot of that too.
I mean, you look at some of this stuff, it's like, man, I mean, I'm a pretty nice guy. I wouldn't, ever start a fight or anything. I like to stand up against bullies.
Yeah.
But, some of the ways that they talk to people, I'm like, man, if you said that to me, I'd probably knock you out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And that's, I mean, I avoid it too at this point in my life. Like, I think a lot of that negativity is if it's not adding a value or it's not giving me something to learn from, in that sense, I'm okay. I'm okay with criticism. I'm even okay with seeing some negativity that I now have the tools necessary to push out the negative and understand where it's that, that might be coming from a negative place. But that was a good point. I'm going to take in that as constructive criticism. I think that's fine to do. But negativity just for the point of negativity, I have too much stuff going on in my life. Too much to do, too many goals, too much that is more important than letting that stuff drag me down or, getting consumed by it.
Yeah, I think it's easier now than ever in some ways because, we have an algorithm that's showing us things every day on social media. Mm-hmm. And, the longer that we're spending on Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is, TikTok now. I don't have a TikTok, but I know a lot of people are on there. The better chance we have to be really influenced, by that. What do you think about the?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And then plus that's how their algorithms work, right? They do two things. They make it an echo chamber to where it's just giving you what you want to see. So you're not seeing opposing sides anymore, which is harmful in a lot of ways. And some of those algorithms are used for negative things, to put you down dark paths or even, and that's where it goes into, pornographic stuff or things to take you down a negative path mentally in life. That I think a lot of those things are harmful for people.
Well, it's like I have friends say, man, all I see is women in bikinis on my Instagram now. I'm like, well, that's because you're clicking on it. The algorithm's feeding you what you want to see.
And it's true. It's true. And even my feed was full of that because I followed so many. I used to just follow like everyone. Oh, hot girl, single dude, a hot girl, follow.
Yeah.
I didn't even care. And the problem with that is like I didn't think anything of it. 'Cause it's like it's the internet. Who cares? But I was just seeing that on my feed. And these are girls that I don't want to date them. Mm-hmm. These aren't girls I care to know. Most of them. I'm not saying all of them, but I don't know them. And that when they're leading with just their selling point is sex.
Ass and titties.
When that's all they have and that's what they're putting out there all the time, that's personally not a type of girl that I would want to date. So why am I following them? Why am I putting that in front of my face all the time? And I actually recently went through and it was tough. That Instagram makes it hard to delete people. I don't know why. They need to change that. But it took me forever, but I was just deleting like everyone. I deleted everything. Now my feed is full of cat and puppy videos.
I think it's hard to unfollow them if if their page is private. Not hard, but you got to have an extra step of hitting that click. So if it's
There's
private,
an extra step, but also let me just select everyone I want. Like,
oh yeah,
and there's only so many you can do in a day.
okay.
So I
didn't
go
know
through
that.
boom, boom, delete, boom, boom, delete, boom, boom, delete. Okay, well that's 3 out of 3,000 I need to delete.
It's like max. You've hit your max number.
yeah, it'll say like they do it so it's not like a spam thing or like some AI account or some. That's what it says. Some warning. It's like you've reached your limit of what you can do today.
Yeah, and I'll have people come up in my feed that I didn't follow that I'm following now. Do you ever have that happen?
It followed people for you.
Yes,
I don't know.
for sure. There are some people I'm like, I do not know who this person is.
Really.
It's,
I still follow too many people for me to even tell. I honestly barely look at my feed.
Yeah, I don't follow. I mean, I was following over 1,000, and then I just basically went through, and it's pretty much just people that I know. Now maybe there's a couple that I don't really know them. Like maybe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm following right now. I don't know him, but
Sure.
counts like that. But yeah, it's weird how that works. What do you think of RFK Jr.?
Honestly, I didn't look. I haven't even been following that much. I've been staying out of a lot of the. I feel like there's so much that we're inundated with current events. So much. I mean, the alien stuff now, and this and that, and they're just. I feel like it's almost a ploy to just overwhelm us with so much that you don't know what's real and fake anymore. You can't even tell up from down anymore.
Yeah.
And so I really start to retreat because it gets overwhelming for me, especially because my life has been so busy lately. It starts to overwhelm me, and I used to almost just focus on that stuff. Meaning, I saw it as like my fight to be up to date on everything and fight the good fight, and really make my opinions sharpen them and know how to tackle everything that I care about in the world.
Sure.
Kind of big picture attack, right? And what I learned was it became such a heavy weight on my shoulders, and I was surrounded by so much negativity because I was just focused on the negative, the things I want to change in the world, right? So I was obsessively focused on the negative, and that weight starts becoming just way too much. Too much of a weight for one man to hold. And on top of that, I started realizing that I was fighting from a flimsy foundation, meaning I wasn't focused or helping the things within arm's length anymore. I wasn't putting enough attention into figuring out my life, getting my footing on solid ground. What do I want for the future? How do I achieve that? I also, you can't just be surrounded by negativity. I need happiness. I need love. I need all of that to have solid footing. Whereas I saw that as I can't waste my time with it. I have big picture goals. I have to fight. And that was a mistake. That was a mistake because you have to look, you're here for the war, not the battle, right? You're here for the long run. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you have to set up a solid foundation. You have to have solid footing to fight upon.
Yeah, I think that's, when people get involved in politics or issues that are important, I think that's kind of the evolution. I know like when I first got involved with Ron Paul's campaign, I mean, I guess I saw him in 2007, 2008 on the debate stage, and I couldn't believe what he was saying. A lot of people forget how impactful that was. When
It was huge.
Ron Paul is sitting on the debate stage, and he takes on Rudy Giuliani. And, at that time, the Republican Party was all about war. And they were, yay on the Iraq war, yay on the Afghanistan war. Let's, stay in these forever. We didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And, Ron Paul got on that stage and schooled people. I mean, it's hard. Like, if people were watching that and they were intellectually honest, there's no way you could think that he didn't win those debates.
Absolutely.
He crushed people.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani, came back after Ron Paul was talking about, why we went into war in 9/11 and why that was probably a bad idea, and that we should actually listen to the reasons they attack us. And, that was the first, when he said that, I'm like, oh yeah, why do they say they attack us? Well, we have, we have our troops on the Arabian Peninsula. We've killed a bunch of them, like where we've been bombing them for years.
Right.
They want us out of there, largely. And Giuliani comes back and says, as someone who survived 9/11, I've never heard that it's our fault. And Ron Paul's like, I'm not saying it's our fault.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that we should listen to why they attacked us, because maybe we could learn something from it. And he explained blowback and how, unintended consequences to, the things that we were doing over there.
And it becomes a snowball effect. It becomes a snowball effect with no one remembering the starting point anymore. Meaning, you kill them, they kill us, they kill them. Once you go back and forth, especially with how long this has been going, now it's almost like in a fight, both sides are justified.
Right.
Meaning, our troops go, they killed my friends, they killed this, and so you're out for blood. Whereas their side, same thing. You killed my family, you killed my friends, and they're out for blood. And honestly, and that's the screwed up, constant cycle of it. At that point, it's justified on both sides.
Right.
If someone killed my family and bombed my village, I'm picking up arms and I'm kicking ass.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the messy side of it that people need to remember, and that thinking about it that way can also help bring upon peace in a way of coming to the table and understanding each other's grievances, and actually having a real talk to figure out how to squish it. But we know none of the people in charge want that. So
well, it's the idea of how would you feel if someone were doing the same thing to you?
Mm-hmm.
That question should be asked, all the time. Like, if someone were doing the same thing to you, how would you feel? And sometimes you have to do things that you wouldn't like done to you either. Especially when it comes to war and those type of things. But that idea, and then he questioned. He put into question everything that we were told and breaking it down.
Yeah.
If you go back to 9/11, we were told that they hated our freedom. That's how far we've come. Back then, most people believe they just hated us for our freedom. Right. And it's nothing to do with that. They don't give a shit. Yeah. They don't want our democracy forced on them. And and he really broke that down. And then it's interesting nowadays too, because if you look at what we just went through with the pandemic and COVID, and how quickly people just go along with that narrative. But if you go back, through history, and you see how many times the government has lied to us on a lot of these issues. I mean, if you go back to the Iraq War, that's recent. Mm-hmm. Weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Yep. Why did we attack Afghanistan? I still don't know why we attacked Afghanistan. Yep. They said that Bin Laden was in Afghanistan, so we're gotta go find him in Afghanistan. Well, they ended up finding him in Pakistan, and we spent 20 plus years in a war over there that I still don't know. I mean, I've seen stories, actually, legitimate news stories saying that we're guarding the opium fields, the poppy fields.
I'm sure it's a multi-pronged attack with so many conspiracies behind it. But yeah, you quickly, if you accurately study history, you quickly learn that take everything with a grain of salt. Don't trust everything you hear. In fact, don't trust anything you hear until you really think it through yourself, and still understand that you still don't know the full picture of what's going on.
Absolutely.
There's so much of that story which is just such obvious BS, and if you logically assess it, and you're right, Ron Paul was very good at opening up a lot of people's eyes to a different form of politics, because it became such cookie cutter, just say the talking points, everyone gobbles that up, and he's just kind of like, am I in crazy land? Like, think this through a little bit. And then you're like, wow, you can think it through. So you're absolutely right there. And that whole thing, like, even just said, like, yeah, we had to invade to find Bin Laden, this and that. And even that, when you logically break it down, it's like, okay, let's say we had a gang here, like the Bloods, that went and attacked, whatever. They attacked Germany. And then Germany goes, oh, we were attacked by a gang. Let's go bomb all of America and find them. It's like, it was a gang. It wasn't America. Like, I didn't do it. We didn't do it. Why are you? So when you really start thinking about it just logically like that, it quickly crumbles on itself and raises a lot of questions.
Yeah. And do you think that people are just like willfully ignorant at this point?
Yeah, I think that a big problem is people are inundated with so much BS, and I think that is a real attack. I brought it up a little bit earlier, but I think that is a real attack when your life becomes so complicated. In the sense of right now, we're just struggling to survive. The economy is a mess. This and that. We're okay. Now there's aliens. Okay, now there's all this. Now there's Trump indictment. Okay, now there's Hunter Biden laptop. Like suddenly, it's like okay, it's like they reached a point where they're like, well, we can't cover up all these wrongdoings and all these conspiracies and all whatever the hell we're doing behind the scenes. So let's just throw everything in the kitchen sink at them. Then nothing, you become so numb to everything. Like literally, like they're talking about aliens. Like aliens could land right now and be like, hey, Brando, can we come probe you? I'd be like, not shocking. Like, all right, let's give it a go. Like
Right.
nothing shocks me anymore. And I think, and especially to the normal person who's just trying to deal with their problems with their wife, raise their kids well, like, oh, I can't pay the bills right now, which is a big problem. The economy is very different than it was 10, 20, 50 years ago. Right now, we're just struggling as a population to stay above poverty level. Things are getting bad. Money does not go as far. I think all of that is by design because all of that is keeping you distracted and keeping it to where I can't even care enough. You could tell me that the government is trying to kill us all and they created all these problems and they're literally about to take us to a concentration camp tomorrow. You could tell us that, but we're so exhausted and so inundated with stuff that's numbed us down that you just kind of go, oh, well, okay. Like you don't even have the energy to know where to pick up arms and fight anymore. What are you fighting for anymore? I think that is a real coordinated effort and attack.
Yeah. So in a way, it's willful ignorance because we're like, I can't handle it anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm willfully going to not,
Yes.
Yeah.
Willful ignorance, you're numb to it, and you're inundated with problems within, your arm's length where you can just focus on that anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting because, it does seem like it's by design. We do have so much being thrown at us at once. I mean, you talk about aliens, but that's a big deal, right? I mean, if that were brought out 20 years ago, it would be the biggest story of all time.
Exactly.
Right now, I don't think people even know about the aliens for the most part. I don't think the average person realizes that, there was just an acknowledgement that they had biological remains that were not from Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
exactly.
it's an example of how far we've come and how polarized. And you look at, for instance, the issue of child trafficking, one that you and I have been involved in helping to stop. I never thought that was going to be a political issue. Never thought. I mean, I started Nick Nanton, who directed the Operation Underground Railroad documentaries. He did the one in Haiti and the one in Colombia that hasn't come out yet. But, Nick showed that to me 2016, 2017, and we're like, Scott, Dedrick, and I were like, whatever you need, like, we will do what we can, to support you financially within our means, et cetera. And, now 2023, it's considered a QAnon conspiracy if you believe that it's going on. And it's become, a right-left issue where politics shouldn't even be in the middle of it.
It shouldn't be at all. And that is scary. That is scary that it's being approached that way, and maybe by design as well, to try to take weight off of it and to take focus off of the truth of it. And the truth of it is it's a massive, massive industry and issue in the world. One of the biggest. And the fact that there's any sort of ploy that can take weight off of that and take people's minds off of it and just go, oh, that's silly, conspiracy theory. Like, oh, how is that succeeding? How is that plan enacted? It is scary. It's terrifying. And that's why I think being active in that space as someone part of a charity in that space, so important. It's so important to people to open people's eyes to it, because really at the end of the day, if you talk to an individual, it does not, unless you're a real piece of crap, your politics do not matter. When you really just break it down to what is more important to fight for than the innocence in this world?
Yeah.
There's not, that is our future. That is,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at The Sound of Freedom, the movie that just came out, and you read the headlines from certain, big Washington Post, big publications, and in a way they demonize it. Like, how dare you make a movie about this? That's not really an issue.
right.
And you scratch your head because I don't think that all the people that are working at Washington Post are bad people. But I think that there's good people that believe that it's really not an issue, and that the movie somehow is bad.
Right. That's like the narrative, the propaganda push on it to take your focus off of it. And you could criticize things in it that, oh, that's unrealistic, this or that or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's nice to have people's attention to the fact that it is an issue. It does exist. Whether a Hollywood movie, you think it's, Hollywooditizing it or whatever, exaggerating things. Like, the truth is, it exists. There is darkness in this world. There are horrible things that go on. And, some people, and I've experienced this a lot, some people can't handle knowing the truth.
Sure.
They want to stay in their bubble and completely ignore it. And let me tell you, part of me understands it. Part of me understands it because as someone that's part of this fight and has dedicated my life to similar fights and currently, in the thick of it with this, it is hard. It can be hard. It can be a heavy weight to be constantly seeing and reminded of the evil that can go on in this world. It can be consuming. It can destroy you. It can take away all your happiness, and that's something that I've had to deal with myself, because when you see it, it is such an important fight. And as long as you're a good person or a fighter in any way, you want to just pick up and kick ass. You want to, but long term, like, it is a heavy, heavy weight on your shoulders, and you need a balance. You need yin and yang. You need as much, like, at the end of the day, why I do this or why I care, and I feel like why most people care about these issues, is we are good deep down.
Sure.
Like, I'm motivated by innocence and beauty in this world. I love it. And the older I get, the softer I get towards it. Like, I'll look at a silly dog video and get tears in my eyes now. Like, I'm just a soft old man at this point. But the stronger that love is, on the flip side, the stronger the fire inside me that wants to destroy everything that threatens what I love.
Yeah.
And wants to destroy that innocence. And I think that's important. But again, it scares some people. And I think that's where it's important to still know you can't keep your head in the sand anymore. As long as this evil's going on in this world, as long as there are messed up people out there, and especially as things are getting so bad and constantly worse, you do not have the luxury. If you are a decent person, you do not have the luxury of keeping your head in the sand anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, it will affect you. It will affect your family. You are failing as a husband, as a father, as a person, whatever your situation is. You are failing if you're keeping your head in the sand.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that you need to pick up a weapon and fight.
Sure.
It does not mean that.
Well, and that's and for those listening that don't know, so Brando is a board member for Operation Lightshine. Operation Lightshine is an organization that was founded by our friend Matt Murphy. He's no longer with them. He's with the Sentinel Foundation.
Yeah, he moved foundations.
They do child rescue all over the world. But you started working with. You were one of the first board members, correct?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was there before we officially started. I helped start it.
Yeah, and so talk about a little bit. What is Operation Lightshine? How did you get involved, and kind of where's it going?
Yeah, I'll give you that story because it is almost, whatever your beliefs are, it's either extremely serendipitous or a godsend in some ways. How everything's just so weirdly fallen into place. But the short of it is, I did work with charities in the past. I had a background in philosophy, and I would do charities with surrounding kids in schools and teach self-esteem, things like that. And then I also helped out with some anti-human trafficking and child exploitation charities, just with events in the Hollywood world. Like, not a big deal. But one thing I did notice is most charities, I just didn't like them. It didn't seem genuine. A lot of people working there didn't seem really motivated by the cause. It was kind of the clout or the tax, incentives, things like that. I saw through that very fast, and that put a bad taste in my mouth when it came to charities. And that said, I'll go off on a side path here. How it led up to Operation Lightshine. About 15 years ago, I was working out at a gym, and I became friends with the guy I was working out with. And I saw that he was sleeping in a studio apartment, at his friend's studio apartment, on a 2-foot space, like between the bed and the wall. It was ridiculous because he just moved from East Coast, from Jersey. And so I was like, "Oh, dude, that's silly." Like, I was a kid. I was like 19 at the time, but I was like, I have a living room. Like, get a blow-up mattress or whatever, and stay here. So I let him stay with me, and we were very good friends. And he ended up getting a job with Homeland Security, and so he ended up moving back. He moved over to New York, and we kept in touch throughout the years, stayed buddies. And funny enough, funny side story, and it is kind of serendipitous also in a way, or a little foreshadowing maybe. I was in New York filming a project, and he invited me to the New York Homeland Security Christmas party. It was like a big party with the big wigs from Homeland Security from DC and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, you're supposed to be an agent at this party, though. So if anyone asks, say you work in child exploitation." I didn't know what that was. Like, I'm a kid. I was probably, I don't know, 23, 20, I don't know. And I was like, he's like, "Oh, that's like child porn, things like that." I was like, "Oh, okay." So we're hanging out. We're at the party, and one of the big wigs from Washington starts chatting with me. He's like, "Oh, what department do you work in?" I was like, child porn." And he's like, "Oh, how do you like it?" "I love it." And and my friend's just like, "Oh my God." I just looked like such an idiot.
Yeah.
But it was, he quickly sussed out that I did not work there. He was like, "What are you doing here? Go have fun." Like, it was totally cool. So I just look like an idiot, but it's a funny story now. And what's funny is a while later, I was in LA, like maybe a year or two later. I was in LA at a bar watching a fight, a UFC fight on the screen. And I get a call, and you can barely hear it, but it's a message, blah, 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 from Homeland Security, give me a call. I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" I rush outside, I'm freaking out, I call the number back, and ends up it was that guy from Homeland Security. He was actually watching TV with his daughter, and I was on a TV show she was watching. And he remembered me from the party. He reached out and was like, "Oh, could you send me a signed photo?"
Oh, cool.
It was funny. I was just telling that story last week in Florida to some of the guys in TTF and Homeland Security, and they knew. They were like, "Oh, was it?" They said the name. "Was it blah blah? 10 years ago from Washington, was it?" And I called up my buddy. I don't want to say names. He was an agent still in the force. Called him up. I'm like, "Who was it?" And he said the name. I'm like, "It was that guy." Like, it was funny how it's all come full circle. But anyway, to get to the point of how it came full circle, all that happened. And then with Matt, when we started talking about, what happened with his sister, who was lost to human trafficking, and we wanted to, he wanted to start a charity, and he asked if I wanted to be involved. I was gung ho about it. So I'm like, here's what I saw that I didn't like in charities, and then there's anti-human trafficking. It's all overseas. Like, what about our own backyard? And we got so gung ho about it, and we started it, and then I talked to my buddy. So when I moved out here, another serendipitous thing, I called up my buddy in Homeland Security in New York. This is way before the charity was even a seed of a thought. And I was like, "Oh man, I'm randomly escaping LA and moving to Nashville." He's like, "What?" He's like, "I just transferred from New York to Nashville to Homeland Security." I'm like, "What, really?" So we stayed then we're buddies here, randomly in the same town. And so when we started this charity, I told him about it. And he's like, "Well, let me set up a meeting for you with the head of child exploitation." We met with him. Again, I don't want to say names, but he's like the godfather of this space. Anti-human trafficking and child exploitation. He wrote the playbook of how to fight it. He's very well respected in this space. We met with him, and he's like, "This is something," because we had to devise a plan that, how do you tackle this issue in the States? Most charities don't touch it in the States. And the reason why is there's so much red tape. It's so difficult to do anything here. Whereas overseas, it's a little bit more like the Wild West. You can get more done. But here, there's very little you can get done. So we had to put together a plan to help do that. And when we first talked to him, it was the spark of, he was like, this is kind of what I've been thinking about wanting to do. And so it worked perfectly to where we had that support of Homeland Security, and we were able to put together, we're the first charity that's been able to put together a plan where, okay, how do you affect this space in the States? Well, as a private organization, there's certain things we can do that government agencies can't do. And then there's obviously a lot that government agencies can do that we can't do. So it's a matter of devising a strategy to where we can play off of each other's weaknesses and lend support where the other isn't allowed to do that. And we put together this whole plan, and that's what's now turned into the Intercept Task Force, which we're doing with the government agencies. Intercept stands for Interagency Child Exploitation and Persons Trafficked Task Force. And so that's where that synergy came from. And then that's also how the Tim Tebow Foundation became involved, because as we started getting legs, they wanted to check us out because they work in this space, and they're kind of vetted us and kind of, who are you guys? And they had their guy that's the expert in this space come to kind of vet us and talk about, okay, what are you doing? And then quickly when we brought up the name of who we're partnering with, he was like, oh, he taught me everything I know. So they're like, oh, okay, they're up to something. And so, yeah, I mean, long story short, it's this journey that, that's what I was able to add to it so far. And I'm still in the fight and still helping any way I can. And it's very beautiful and rewarding and at times difficult and heavy. But I was just out in Florida last week shaking hands with some of the agents in the task force at Homeland Security, HSI. And they were just, I don't know these guys. They don't know me. And just shaking my hand and telling me like how much more efficient they are. Like with this strategy and this task force, he's like, yeah, I'm probably 400% more effective now.
Wow.
And they were showing me around, showing me there's certain things I'm not allowed to see, obviously, but just the cases that are closed and the people put behind bars and the children saved, it's really working. It's really having an impact. And so to be part of that is special.
Well, and what is the Intercept Task Force? How does it work differently than the old model?
Well, what it's able to do is cut away some of the fat and the interagency dynamics or lack of a dynamic. What I mean by that is, in some ways, I have to be careful what I say. There's certain things I'm not allowed to talk about. But I mean, that said, everything's by the book, and that's the important thing of how we've been able to do this. Is it's a very tough book to navigate, the rule book, but we've been able to do it correctly. But there's even just differences within agencies where you have, let's say it's even a little competitive because of the way the budgets work. Okay, no, we're doing this. Okay, now it's competing with, but we're doing this. We want this, extra budget or whatever it is. One thing that we're doing is we're bringing it all together. So instead of competing, you're working together. Now you're working in tandem. Now you're having each other's back. Now you're able to be a lot more efficient and effective. Now, you needed a week or two to get a search warrant. Now it's literally right next to you. You go tap on the door and you get that search warrant in 30 minutes.
Interesting.
So 2 weeks to 30 minutes. Now you can act on it. Now you have now in our facility you have the evidence room and the forensics lab and all of it becomes a lot more accessible and in a work environment where they're able to help each other more. So it's almost like more teamwork oriented. It's kind of greasing the wheels a little bit more efficiently. And they were underfunded, undermanned. Like, this is a space that, like, there's so much money that's thrown into the drug war. So much money. What is it, like 200 billion? And like there's 200 million in the anti-human trafficking. Don't quote me on that, but it's like a ridiculous difference like that. And so they get thousands and thousands and thousands of leads that are legit leads that should be acted upon. We're talking child porn and kids trafficked and really heavy cases. They're able to just barely scratch the surface. And so now with greasing the wheel a little bit, making it more efficient, and bringing in extra funding, we are now able to up the manpower, bring in more equipment, and new technology, and have it all work better and together.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean it's been pretty incredible watching the growth of Operation Lightshine, and I was a board member for a short time. Actually, Matt came over here to pitch me the idea. A couple years. I remember it was I think Jelly Roll. My buddy Jelly Roll was doing a music video, and Matt came over with Dustin Black, and they're like, "Here's the idea." I'm like, sounds like a pretty good idea. I didn't know Matt very well at the time, but little did I know, they were going to build this organization. Y'all were going to build this organization that, just does incredible work and has helped a lot of kids, which is the most important part.
Yes, and that's where I urge people to look into it a little bit. I know it's a dark, dark space. It's very heavy, and in a way, in my life, I've seen a lot of dark things, and I've dealt with a lot of heavy things, and it is a burden. And I've taken it upon myself to lean into it as like kind of the warrior mentality of, okay, I need to know the enemy. I've leaned into it way more than most people should, and that's been a burden for me, and it's been very difficult for me to navigate those waters, to still not get consumed by the darkness, and still, and that's been a recent kind of path of mine that I'm trying to carve out, is focus more on the light and the beautiful side of life, and just don't get consumed by it, because I was so consumed by it because I want to run in and fight it. You want to fight it, but you only have so much strength when it comes to that. And so that's been my personal battle. But what I urge people is, even if you're not trying to be in the front lines in any way, just know that the issue's there. Look into it. Understand that evil is there, and that is a motivating factor to at least support in some way. Let me tell you, a lot of the agents working in this stuff, they are seeing things that, I've seen dark stuff, and they're having to see it and be consumed by it daily.
Yeah.
And it's a quick turnaround. A lot of these agents get burnt out.
Oh yeah.
And they're gone.
If you had to see I've never had to see those images, thank God. But I can only imagine what they go through.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that, I even, sometimes I even say examples to just make it a sobering moment for people. Some of the things I've seen that just, still haunt me to this day. And I don't want others to see that. But I want people to know it's real and it exists, to know the gravity of the situation, to have that at least somewhat lean on them, for them to want to do something about it, and to lend a hand. And that support is so important. These agents, they're human. These people in this fight, they are people. And to have that weight on their shoulders and to see that stuff every day, it is crushing.
Yeah.
And so they want to know that there's support behind them. They want to know that people care. They want to know that people appreciate them, and that there's an army behind them of support. That is a very important motivating factor that anyone in this fight or any important fight needs. And that's where I go, don't put your head in the sand. You don't need to see, you don't need to be on the front lines. You don't need to see what we've seen, but just understand it enough to be a helping hand, to be just a hand on the back of, hey, I got you, I support you, I appreciate you. I think that's vitally important for these agents.
Well, and what people don't realize, it is human trafficking, child trafficking. It's modern day slavery.
Yeah.
I was looking at some government numbers. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's $150 billion a year industry right now.
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it is, if not more than that, that we know, right? It's massive.
I mean, it's just, it's huge.
People don't realize how big it is.
And, so seeing now the mainstream media narrative that is suggesting that it's not real, that's suggesting that it's a QAnon conspiracy, and that those that are fighting against it are think about how twisted society has to be to put down a movie like Sound of Freedom, that's really showing how heroic Tim Ballard is, to quit his job in the government, to go overseas, set up an undercover sting to rescue. I think they rescued like 150 children. That happened.
Yeah.
And somehow making that bad.
Yeah, it's a propaganda spin. But I think even if you don't like things about him, or the movie, let's say you think it's Hollywoodized, dramatized, and exaggerating this and that, it's still, why would you be against putting some attention on the issue? And I know firsthand it has greatly, a bunch of charities, it has greatly increased donations. And so it's greatly increased people's awareness and effort and attention on the issue. So in that sense, even if there's a bunch of exaggerated points and whatever your criticism is, it's been a good cause. I mean, it's done a good thing.
Well, and I've actually heard the movie is pretty darn accurate. They can say what they want, but for instance, I've watched the documentary of what the movie was about in Colombia. I watched the documentary. It's not out in public yet, but I mean that's all real. And yeah, people can say what they want about Tim Ballard. Some people might not like him, but he is a hero.
Yeah.
You might not like how the hero went about doing what he did, and I have no problem with it personally, but some people might. But he's still a hero. He's still in it for the right reason, to save children. And nobody has put a greater spotlight on the issue than him. So whatever he's done has brought us to this point to where now the world can see it. They can turn away if they want, but I don't see how can be seen as a bad thing, because it's all happening in many ways because of him.
Right.
It's like the light that's being shined on it is happening because of him, whether you like it or not.
Right. And I mean, I can tell you firsthand, it is real.
Yeah.
It is real. Like, it is a very dark space, and there are children and women and boys and men and affected by it every day, in the millions.
Yeah.
So it is a real issue, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, there's a lot of good organizations too, like Operation Lightshine, like the Sentinel Foundation. That's where Matt is now. It was founded by Glenn Devitt. He was a Delta Force guy, badass dude, great guy.
And that's where I think I'm happy for Matt in that sense. Like, it was more in line. Like, I told Matt, I was like, there's nothing I could do for Sentinel Foundation. Like, that's not, you guys are all in the thick of it. It's more hands-on and fantastic. Like, I feel like that's a really good space for him. Whereas OLS, like, I'm still, I don't have a military background. I don't have a law enforcement background, but I'm still able to do my part and make a difference. And so that's a vehicle that I'm able to do something in.
Sure. No, it's good. Yeah, I mean, it's and there's a lot of other organizations too that are doing great work.
There's a bunch.
And that people can support.
Yeah.
It does seem that there's now a lot of attention on it. It is really interesting when people say, "Oh, it's not real. It's not a thing." It's like, I do wonder if the news outlets that are pumping out that propaganda, like, they've got to be the enemy, right?
That gets into bigger conspiracies. There's a lot of darkness in this world, and it's not crazy to think from high places, from the top down, there's involvement, at least on some level. That is not crazy.
Yeah. So, I hope that people can kind of wake up to that, because it's kind of chilling right now throughout society what we're seeing. This is a great example with the child trafficking. I never thought one of the things that Scott and Dedrick and I used to say early on, Robin Williams, another friend that was helping fund one of the documentaries, is like, there's no way this can ever be wrong. Fighting fighting against this can't be seen as wrong. We'll always stand up to it. And, it's like one of those things that we were so all in, and we're still all in, but we were wrong in the sense that we never thought that it could be
Controversial.
It's like, what is going on
Well,
here?
we live in an upside down world now. Everything is controversial. So that's unavoidable. But I think that's where it's important to get the support of the people, right? The masses, where, yeah, you can have propaganda spinning everything is controversial. Oh, you can't say anything. You can't do anything nowadays. But I think if you have good intentions and you're leading with your heart and you really try to communicate and express to people like that you are fighting for the light, the love, like you're the right direction. That may sound subjective, but if that's how you approach it, the masses of people will see that you're coming from a good place and support you. The problem is not everyone gets to see that. Not everyone gets to speak their mind. Not everyone gets to give their side of the story.
Yeah.
And then they just rely on the propaganda talking points of the media and those talking heads, and that is dangerous.
Yeah, but you have propaganda that's out there fighting against exposing child trafficking. The mainstream news narrative in our country right now is that somehow it's a QAnon conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's not. So you probably have 40 to 50% of the country, that are now politically divided over it, saying, "Oh, you guys are just crazy over here." I'm neither Republican or Democrat. I'm not. I don't even really know where I fall. Like, it's just what the issues are. I try to find the right thing, but I never thought this would be, a political issue. I never thought that the mainstream media was so evil that they would twist it, because they have to be complicit.
It's a red flag. It's a red flag.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's been difficult the last month for me, kind of working through this because of, to me, what it really means about society. Well, not society necessarily, like our government and those in power. That's a better way to put it. Those that are in power.
Yeah.
We don't even know who they are. Yeah, we don't know who's in power, but somehow they're allowing this narrative to go on, and it can't be good. It's got to be evil. And so does that mean that we just have evil controlling all of the narrative?
You do have very nefarious individuals, and most of, I can only speak from my limited knowledge, right? But I'm good at putting 2 + 2 together as well. And I agree. You tie a lot as you go up the food chain, up the ladder. There's a lot tied to it that is irrefutable in its function when you assess it. And you also start seeing, it's almost like working in Hollywood. Hollywood is put together very similarly to the government or the governments of the world. You start seeing gatekeeping, meaning there is a certain agenda and there is certain long-term goals that have probably been around before we were born. They will continue past when we're dead. There are long-term goals, and they make sure to gatekeep to have the right people in place to further and help along these goals. And if you are a threat to it, you are not allowed in that position. They will find ways for that. And so that absolutely happens. So people go, oh, how can everyone in the government be evil? Well, first of all, not everyone, but it also goes a lot higher than we probably realize. But that said, there absolutely is vetting and gatekeeping that goes on. So certain individuals can make it up there that have shortcomings, problems. Maybe they have big skeletons in the closet that they're hiding. All of that are control mechanisms. There are ways for them to be controlled so they know that they will push, well, really whatever the hell they're told to push. And that's what gatekeeping is used for. And that absolutely happens. It may not be everyone, it may not happen always, but does it happen? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and seeing what the response is to the people, uh, you know, just believing what they're being told, and then it is very tribal. I see it with both the Republicans and Democrats. I see, the Republicans get on one kick, and then it's the enemy is the Democrat, and then the Democrats like, oh, it's the crazy Republicans, and it
Yeah.
becomes this bullshit.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's one of the thousands of tools that are used that are mental attacks on the public to let these plans and let these bigger picture goals of theirs play out, and so, to where we don't, again, we're inundated with so much. Back when it was simple, things were more black and white. It's a lot easier to just see up from down, right from wrong, and come together in a humanly sense and go, screw you, we don't like this, and you fight back. We are now so spread apart and so inundated with so much BS and just barely staying afloat that how do we band together and fight for anything?
Yeah. Well, it's like the dots are practically touching. It's like it's not hard to connect anymore. But yeah, this month has been an interesting one. The last just because of all the work that we've done fighting child trafficking over the years. Not like the guys on the ground, but financially and just talking about it and publicly and those type of things. And to
Lending a
see,
hand, supporting.
to see somebody like a movie like that happen, and obviously it's done very well at the box office, which is great. But to see the negative aspect of it, and it's just it's a little sad. Because it's a real issue that
It's scary, and yeah, I mean that's the world we live in now, right? Very scary times.
yeah, it's wild. Let's go into your background in politics a little bit with Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
What was your are you still a libertarian, or what would you consider
I wouldn't
yourself?
call myself a libertarian, but I'm kind of like you. I'm more of I stopped aligning with any set party. I'm more of a issue by issue basis, and just try to focus on myself and build my own, always sharpening the tools of my own personal philosophy and how it works, right from wrong, blah, 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 from the foundation up, and then to tackle each issue like that. But yeah, I did have a background in philosophy to start, and I was very into Ayn Rand. I was kind of an expert on Ayn Rand, on objectivism in that space. We're talking Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead, read all her stuff. And so I was probably, 14 when I was really diving into that. And I got really into it to the point where just through happenstance, I started meeting some people in that space. And then they were kind of, older people that it ended up being, in a space with friends of hers, like colleagues of hers, partners of hers, lovers of hers. I started really finding myself in this inner circle, the Ayn Rand inner circle. And we're talking like Nathaniel Branden, Barbara Branden, John Hospers, who started the Libertarian Party. He was part of starting it, one of her students. And they really liked me because I was such an expert on her in that space at the time. And I don't know, they enjoyed being around me. They're very old at the time, 80s, 90s. We're talking very old. I was a teenager, probably. And we got along really well, and I started wanting to do things with them. So that's what helped start like the charity when I was teaching kids about self-esteem, like just kind of more basic philosophy-based ways to help kids at the time. It was, I guess I've been in that space helping kids for a while, and they helped me with that. And then John Hospers started libertarianism, and so we would have a lot of talks about that. And they're all deceased now. They all passed away, and I feel like in a way they passed the torch to me that I wanted to carry forward, and I have, and not necessarily. I wouldn't call myself an objectivist. Like,
What is an objectivist?
It's Ayn Rand's philosophy. Based on objective reality. It's very A is A basis. It's very logic-based philosophy, which I can't refute that. I am all for that. But that said, that some parts can become a little subjective, just in the differences. What is
There is gray.
yeah, where or what is gray, or maybe it's not gray. Maybe you think it's gray and it's black and white, but he thinks it's white and black. That's where we get into a deeper philosophical discussion of just what our core beliefs are and what we think, and there could be some differences in what she thought was right in objectivism. And I think, maybe this is A, and you think that's A. Anyway, very minute details. I'm not going to get into that, but it did form a lot of the foundation of me caring about philosophy, I would study religions and how humans work, and politics, very important, because the part of philosophy that is literally impacting us every day, whether you want to ignore it or not. And I became obsessed with it, and it honestly helped my acting as well, just understanding people, diving into the psychology of people, and for my characters and all that. And so it was a great tool. But it did really get me into a lot of these doors and spaces, and that later turned into them asking me to do speech writing and speeches for the Libertarian Party for the Gary Johnson 2016 presidential race. And so I was on the campaign trail there. I would do speeches and stuff, open up for him, introduce him to stage, and it was very fun. It was.
What was that like? I like Gary. I think, and you'll probably remember this better than my recollection as we're just talking, but I remember the point where I knew he lost it was an interview on TV where he said something about bombing. He kind of he went along with something that was a really bad idea, foreign policy, and that did not stick to the principles. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Were you talking about the Aleppo situation?
Tell me about that one.
Well, that was one where he just didn't know. He wasn't recollecting what Aleppo was, and it sounds like a minute thing. Most of us would have no idea, but it was an issue. It was a current event issue at the time, and it made him. They spun it to make him look really dumb, and it was a slip up on his part. It was, but to be fair, I mean, it's tough. Like you are interviews all day, constantly fed all this information. You got to know this, got to know this, got to know this. While the person interviewing you, they may be throwing softballs to who they like. It may be a very pampered and put on the mittens interview with certain candidates, whereas others they're trying to make you look like an idiot.
Right.
And so in that sense, you're constantly being attacked, and it's tough. And he did slip up. He genuinely slipped up. But man,
what happened with that? Like, was Aleppo?
He just didn't know what it was. He didn't remember what was going on, and they caught him. And he kind of lied. Well, he didn't lie, but he just kind of pretended like he knew what was going on, and then clearly didn't.
I see.
And so it made him look dumb.
That's what. I remember something like that. I thought it had to do with some type of bombing. I don't know what Aleppo is.
Yeah, I don't even know.
I mean,
I remembered it. I knew at the time, but I knew more details about it at the time, but I couldn't tell you anything though.
Yeah. I mean, but there was a time where I saw him on TV. I like Gary Johnson. I met him a couple times.
Actually, a very sweet, nice guy. If I was going to be more nitpicking, I'd want a stronger, more cutthroat leader of a country. Not saying I wouldn't have voted for him. Like it's all comparison, right? And in context, but he was actually a very good guy. Coming from he cared, and that's what was nice about working.
He was governor too of New Mexico before.
That was nice with working with that party, because I've done a lot of things all over the place, actually, all Democratic space, Republican space, like just more of a hired gun of just finding myself in interesting doors and situations with my jobs. And one thing that was nice about being in such a off of the duopoly side of it, meaning you have Democrats, Republicans, the two big, but then you're working with libertarians where it's just a smaller space, so you meet a lot of people that are more genuine. And it's not as, cookie cutter, by the book, this is how it goes. Like, there was a human element to it. There's more of a human element to it, which I appreciate.
Well, the Libertarian Party, too, you think about it. I mean, at least the average Libertarian knows about the issues, or knows more than the average Republican or the average Democrat.
I would say that, they put more time into it, because since it's off party, it's something that you had to put more time and thought into becoming part of.
I mean, if you see some of these parties that I'll go to, political parties, and I won't say what side, but I find walking around talking to very nice people, but they're being open about their politics more at a political party than just a regular party.
Sure.
And you kind of realize how fanatical people are on both sides. There's not a lot of logic that comes into it. The libertarians are a lot more logical to me in many ways when I'm around, and they can talk about the issues and the history behind that. What do you think about that?
Some of them. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, especially because I can't speak for the Libertarian Party because it's so. I mean, that's one. If I were to criticize anything, it's the fact that there's so many different people part of it, so many different beliefs. Meaning, it's not a concise belief system. It's more like, okay, we're liberty oriented, but I mean, what does that mean? Okay, yeah, I can be a Christian libertarian, an atheist libertarian, a Satanist libertarian, you have very, very different people under that flag.
It's like gender.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
It's fluid, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I get the joke. Yeah, I don't know about that. But yeah. So that's what makes it a lot harder to speak for it. And I would say that's, in a lot of ways, its downfall because it doesn't have a strong enough, cohesive and concise direction to aim towards. It's more of an all-encompassing, like, yeah, we're liberty-oriented. And now the differences between the members in the groups, and then those groups start warring. No, we want this, and then no, we want this, and then suddenly that takes all the attention and all the drama, and they're left in the dust in the race, and everyone else is running forward, and they're just fighting amongst themselves.
Interesting. So a lot of infighting within the party.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yes, I don't know anything about that. I guess what I was talking about when I just talked to libertarians in general, I feel like most of them know about the issues better. I guess when I'm at if I'm at a party with either Republicans or Democrats, depending on what it is, there'll be some intense conversations that can happen at these parties. It's like, oh wow, they're harboring it, and most of the time they're not very well thought out.
Sure.
Yeah,
and that's what you're going to get with. I mean, we have a two-party system where the majority of the country is one or the other.
Yeah.
And majority of people don't know what they're talking about or don't put the time into knowing it. And so they're all going to have some regurgitated talking point to lean on, and they have the confidence of saying it because there's so many people behind them that say the same thing.
I mean, I kind of wonder, like, what would it take for people to just admit or acknowledge that they don't know? You think about, there's a lot of these issues that we're talking about, and there's, we can only go so far, and we don't know. There could be a lot of other things that are at play. Mm-hmm. I think maybe what holds people back right now in America, one of the things that holds people back in America is standing in their righteousness of, this is the only way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very important to stay, I call it active-minded. So there's open-minded, there's closed-minded, and then there's active-minded. That's where it's a constantly evolving battlefield here, and there's constantly new information, and there's so much none of us know. Mm-hmm. None of us know. Some will know more than others, and that's where I take it upon myself to put so much time into studying this stuff, and because I care about it, and it's a lot of what I do. But at the end of the day, there's so much we don't know, so you have to stay active-minded. You might be very cemented. There might be things, and I've been there in life. I really believe in something. This is the way it is. And then I'm thrown new information to equate against all my other information, and that information proves to be correct.
Yeah.
And so you have to be the bigger person enough to be able to take that in, put that into the equation now, into the new information in your mind, let it settle, and utilize it. And that sometimes admits defeat, but it's not defeat. Okay, you made a mistake, but that's how we learn. That's how we grow. And if you just stay cemented in one way and you ignore truthful information that logically, if you sit down, you could assess that it's right, but you shut it out, so you feel like it's just a weakness or admitting you're wrong. That's not how you grow.
No, that's true. You think about where politics where we're at these days. You know, you have it's very polarized, right left. You know, the people on the right. Let's just say, well, the Trump supporters, let's call it that, instead of the people on the right. Trump can almost do no wrong. You know, Democrats just in general hate Trump just to hate Trump. And so a lot of their accusations are bogus. You know, think about what happened during the last, the 4 years that President Trump was president. I mean, the investigations were bogus. All of them turned out to be bogus.
Yeah.
And so,
There's definitely a bias there.
Oh yeah, a huge bias,
obviously.
And you know, you have this situation where Trump can do no wrong to this one group, and then the other side is just throwing out, you know, a lot of BS. Some of the stuff is legit, but most of it's BS. That's a dangerous place to be as a country, where the guy can do no wrong, and then accusations are being told as truths. Misinformation is being spread on the other side about Trump. Where do you go? Where do we go from there?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't have that answer, but I guess one of two directions. You either find a way to bridge that gap and bring people, at least enough people, back to an agreeable place. And that's where you need a sort of, almost a philosophy behind the function of a nation that can be at its core a basic foundational philosophy that we agree upon, and that's what the Founding Fathers tried.
Were you saying shared values, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the Founding Fathers tried to have a agreeable foundation with the Bill of Rights and Constitution, and so we either find a way to bring people back together, utilizing those common core kind of philosophical beliefs, if that's possible, or you keep spreading apart. And if you keep spreading apart, there's only chaos in the future. There will be a fight or a separation, splitting the United States.
Yeah.
Into either side. Here's the right side, here's the left side, or fighting or complete collapse. I don't know what the answer is, but one of those is inevitable if you keep going.
Yeah. How close do you think that we are?
Probably pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, that's relevant. I would say, I mean, that's just a guess, really, but it seems like things are exponentially picking up momentum in whatever direction it's going. So if I were to guess a number, but who cares about my thoughts on that, but 5 years, 10 tops.
Yeah, and so there's
something drastic happening.
Yeah, something drastic happening. I would agree. And then, but I would also bring up that we've been through a lot as a country multiple times. You think about everything that we went through in the 60s. I mean, you had JFK assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated, RFK assassinated, Vietnam War. We made it through that somehow. And my understanding was it was very divisive. Those are very divisive times then. So why, is this worse than then? We're different.
I would say so.
You say so?
The reason why is because you have a much less, aside from the turmoil of world, global, political things going on. I'm not comparing that. What's worse now, that war, this war, that. Well, I'm not comparing that. But what I am thinking about is the people. We have a less cohesive society. We are more divided than ever. And that's not even, it's not even a left-right. It's just plain people are all over the place. They're not even focused on this, or they hate that, or they're we are all over the place. We have no cohesion anymore. And that breeds chaos within a nation. You can't have a nation if you don't have people that fly under that banner and are okay with, having some sort of connection to it and some sort of cohesion and common beliefs and common ideas. If you lack all of that and you're just a bunch of wild cats, you can't herd and just wandering, going around, you can't have a nation that way. And so with all this turmoil, with collapse on the impending doom, and we could have economic collapse or political issue, or whatever it is, we are just kind of scattered individuals at this point. And how do you band together and save anything that needs saving if there's no way to band together?
Yeah, I mean, those are questions that we've got to really figure out and talk through. I mean, as a society, I don't think that most people even realize kind of where we could be at. I think the other side that I've heard is, we've been, we went through a lot more and we're able to hang in there, like in the 60s. But I think...
but what is that? Hang in there. That's a
raw...
Yeah,
hang it will not break apart.
No. I know. I'm not speaking against you right now. What I'm saying is all of that is a camaraderie building. We have something to band together and fight for mentality. It's a pep talk to band together with your brother, and we can get through this. And that's what I'm saying. When you lack cohesion, that falls on deaf ears. That starts to fall on deaf ears. And again, we're scattered individuals, and you have the puppet masters that now have complete control, because who's going to stop them?
Well, and I guess the other idea would be if the propagandists want us to come back together, then that's another.
Talk about the aliens?
Yeah. No, I'm saying that if whoever they are, if they wanted our country to not fight so much, the media narrative would change, because right now it's very divisive. It's you're either left, right. People are pretty dumb with it, but I'm just giving another potential. But I mean I agree with your assessment, from the sense that I don't know how we would get out of this. I have hope. I don't know what I have hope in. Like it's something that it's like a hope of, we can do something. We can survive as a country. But I think there's so many people that the willful ignorance that we were talking about earlier is kind of creeping
No, that's
up.
absolutely true. I would say one thing that we can do, and this is what every individual can do, because I think this is something that can align us. And what that is, and I had to learn this myself. I was so focused on the big picture, crazy things, the world's collapsing, all that, and I may not be wrong. There are a lot of scary things. But focus on what you have at arm's length. Build your foundation. Focus on your family, your loved ones. Find love. Build a family if you don't have one. Work hard to improve yourself, to help your loved ones. All that are things that everyone can agree upon, get motivated by, feel proud of. And doing that also gives you something in common with the other fellow good man who's on that path. And that path just falls in line with human nature. All of us can have that path. And that gives us something to band together for and fight for together.
Yeah, I like it. Well, Ben, thanks for coming on the podcast. We've been going, I could actually go a lot longer, but we have to somewhat cut it short because we got another podcast coming up. But let's do it again, and we'll chat more about a lot of these issues and go as deep as we possibly can, maybe with no time limit next time.
Yeah.
And try to figure some stuff out.
Absolutely. How long has it been?
We've been an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that flew by.
It's
awesome.
Yeah. But
well, thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me on, and it's always nice chatting with you on camera and off camera.
Yeah, exactly. We have these conversations all the time.
Yeah, we do.
This isn't the first time we've had a lot of this, but I mean, it's good to to dive deep with people that want to dive deep and think about these things too, and that are actually concerned with how things might turn out and what we can do to make a positive difference.
These conversations are vitally important.
Absolutely. All right, Brando Eaton, thank you, brother.
Thank you.